Chelsea are chasing two more major signings. A deal for Southampton's Romeo Lavia is close. And they've activated Michael Olise's release clause at Crystal Palace. Good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show, our second one of the evening. Now, these two deals will push Chelsea spending towards £1 billion in 15 months. Good evening. Welcome to the Transfer Show. How about this? Neymar has become the most expensive player of all time. His move to Al Hilal means that clubs have spent more than £300 million to sign him. Plus, news from Manchester City as Pep Guardiola's plans for the season are disrupted. And Arsenal have finally confirmed the loan signing of David Raya. But is that Arsenal done for the summer? But the breaking news in the last half an hour is that the Saudi Pro League has got yet another footballing superstar. Dharmesh, tell us.
Yep, Mike, it's one we have been expecting. Al Hilal have signed Neymar, the Brazilian superstar from Paris Saint-Germain, for a fee that we believe to be around 100 million euros, including add-ons. That's around 86 million pounds. But wait until you hear the confirmation of how much he earns. This is a year, 150 million euros. And I was just on my calculator there, 3 million euros a week, which works out to be €500,000 a day. That is what Neymar will be earning. That's 6 times more than his current PSG contract. So it just feels like that the Galactico era is kind of coming to an end at PSG.
Well, it's moved to the Middle East, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Lionel Messi's gone to the MLS. Neymar now has gone to Al Hilal. There was all sorts of issues with Kylian Mbappe, which on the face of it we think are sorted. But they're now moving towards another phase of their history, our PSG, trying to recruit younger players, younger French players, to just build up a real DNA of that club now, as opposed to bringing in all of these big-name superstars on huge money. So Neymar, the latest departure, 100 million euros is the fee, and he will earn around 150 million euros a year.
Wow. Huge money is a phrase you just used. So let's talk Chelsea.
Yes.
They are still spending. Yeah. What are they up to now?
Right, with regard to Romeo Lavia, we understand that Chelsea are now in advanced talks with Southampton over the signing of the midfielder. One source has told Sky Sports News that there is a cautious optimism that a full agreement can be reached within the next 24 hours. We don't expect personal terms to be a problem. We've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, since Liverpool and Chelsea have gone in for Lavia. Liverpool did all the running early on because they put in a bid that was worth around £60 million. That was accepted by Southampton, but Romeo Lavia's preference is to go to Chelsea. We've heard that one before earlier on this week because Moises Caicedo, Liverpool had agreed a deal with Brighton. His preference was to go to Chelsea, and once again we've got another player who's choosing Chelsea over Liverpool. This time it is Romeo Lavia. They are close to an agreement. There's no confirmation just yet that that agreement has been reached, but we expect that agreement to be reached very, very soon.
Now, we don't know if Michael Olise's preference is Chelsea, but they certainly prefer him.
100%, yeah. It just doesn't stop. £115 million British record transfer for Moises Caicedo yesterday. Romeo Lavia will cost the thick end of £50 million. And now Chelsea are understood to have activated the release clause in the Crystal Palace forward Michael Olise's contract. We think that release clause is around £35 million. And what that effectively means, when you trigger a release clause, you don't really need to speak to the club as such. It's just triggering that clause that gives you the opportunity to speak to the player and conduct a medical. But the decision now will rest with Michael Olise. Even though Chelsea have triggered the clause, it's up to him whether he actually wants to go and talk to Chelsea and join them. The early indications is that it is going to be a positive outcome here for Chelsea and Olise. He's currently out injured, though. He had surgery in the summer for a hamstring problem that he sustained for the France under-21s, but that's not putting Chelsea off. They've pinpointed him as one of their big targets this summer, and they have now triggered that release clause in his contract.
All right, let's talk Manchester City then, also linked with Elise. The news today is that Kevin De Bruyne will miss the next 4 months through injury. So will that change City's transfer plans? Well, that was put to Pep Guardiola at his news conference this afternoon.
We will see. We will see now. After what happened, we don't talk with Chiqui. We will see it, and we will see the chances, the possibilities, and we will see.
Looks fed up, doesn't he? But does that mean that Lucas Paquetá from West Ham, that deal or potential deal will be accelerated?
Well, he did say there that he's going to speak to Chiqui, in the technical department at Manchester City. But look, they've been doing more than that, because we know they are pursuing Lucas Paquetá from West Ham United. They're expected now, I think, to really accelerate. And it's an obvious thing to say. There's only a couple, 2.5 weeks left in this transfer window, so they're going to have to get a move on anyway if they're going to get Paquetá to the Etihad. Talks, we understand, are continuing between both clubs. Early talks have indicated a gap in valuation, not just a gap, quite a big gap. David Moyes, in his news conference before the Bournemouth game last week, he was pretty open about transfers at West Ham United, and he said, look, we've had an offer from Manchester City, but we've rejected that offer. We think that offer came verbally from Manchester City, and we understand it was around £60 million, which is well short of West Ham's valuation. We think they will only deal and consider offers that are around £85 million plus. He's got a release clause in his contract, has Paquetá. That kicks in next summer for £85 million. But look, West Ham hold the cards here. He's got 4 years left on his contract, the option of a further year. And I think Paquetá is pretty understanding about that situation, because he knows that West Ham United will want to get top dollar for him. And it's effectively going to be West Ham United's decision. The only issue West Ham might have is if Paquetá kicks up a fuss, which we should state here, that hasn't happened so far. He's been very professional. He started against Bournemouth after all, and if he wasn't being professional and his head's been turned, which we know it has done, I think David Moyes would have taken him out of the firing line, but he did play. Now, the other clues that we look for when we look at transfers like this is what the potential selling club is doing. Are they looking at life after Lucas Paquetá? It appears that they might be, because they've held initial talks with Ajax over Mohamed Kudus, who's been interesting a whole host of Premier League clubs in this summer's transfer window, not least Brighton. Even Chelsea and Arsenal were thought to be interested as well. So they're looking at Kudus. They've held initial talks, but I think it's one of those where they've made Ajax aware of the interest. They're going to see what happens with Paquetá. If the Paquetá one starts accelerating, I'm sure the Kudus one will start accelerating as well. All
right, let's go back to Manchester City then. It feels like they've got a number of players in their squad who won't be there come September the 2nd. Is that right?
I mean, it's an interesting situation with regard to City. If you look at one of their players, Aymeric Laporte, now, last season, his game time was limited, and that was without Josko Vardiol in the squad. Vardiol has now come into the squad. You would think potentially Laporte's game time might be limited even further. Manchester City could listen to good offers for Laporte, you would think. João Cancelo is an interesting one, because Manchester City had effectively said, you can leave. Not only did they send him on loan to Bayern Munich, but they gave Bayern Munich the option to buy him. That option didn't get taken up. He came back to Manchester City. It could be another situation where Manchester City will try and get a deal done for Cancelo. I mean, Pep Guardiola says all the right things with regard to Cancelo. He's part of our squad moving forward. But the mere fact that they sent him to Bayern Munich and said, if Bayern Munich meet this price, he's gone. So there's that situation. And then Stefan Ortega, the goalkeeper, who was the cup goalkeeper last season, was in goal throughout their FA Cup winning campaign as well.
Plays all the cup games.
Exactly. So we know that Bayern Munich are interested in Ortega. I think Pep Guardiola was asked a question in that news conference, and he wants Ortega to stay, unsurprisingly, to provide competition for Ederson, because that's a good 2 goalkeepers you've got in the department there. But Bayern Munich are in need, because Jan Sommer's left the club. Manuel Neuer's coming back from injury. They need to fill that position.
Yeah, OK. Let's talk Alexander Mitrovic. What's the latest on him at Fulham?
We just mentioned Al Hilal and Neymar. Well, they've actually made a bid for Alexander Mitrovic to Fulham of £46 million. Now, we understand that Fulham are considering that bid. Now, we previously reported during this window that Mitrovic wanted to leave Fulham and that he told relatives he isn't going to be playing for Fulham again. They still took him on the US tour, and there was quite a lot of reintegrating to do, for want of a better word. And I think Marco Silva has been key to convincing him to respond positively to not being allowed to leave initially to Saudi Arabia. Now, he has then since reintegrated himself into the squad. He began training with them, and all of this talk about telling relatives he's not going to play for Fulham again. While that was the case before, he has actually played for Fulham again. On Saturday, he came off the bench against Everton in that 1-0 victory. They've rejected 2 previous bids already in this window from Al Hilal, one for around £25.5 million, another for around £30 million. We think the valuation is £52 million, hence why 46 million is pretty close to that, why Fulham are considering it.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. All right, we're going to take a break, but before we do, some breaking transfer news for you. Billy Sharp on his way to MLS. He has signed for LA Galaxy. So he's gone to join Lionel Messi and play in MLS. Now, coming up after the break, we'll hear from Arsenal's latest recruit, David Raya. Loads of news coming out of Manchester United. We're going to talk Harry Maguire, what's going on there. And we've also got a player dubbed the next Francesco Totti, who's coming to the Premier League. See you in a moment. Ciao. Now, Neymar has completed a £78 million move to Al Hilal as the Saudi football revolution continues. The Brazil forward will earn over £250 million over the length of his deal. Put that into context, he's going to earn £12.5 million a month, which cannot be bad. Dharmesh, you've got an update from Chelsea.
Yes, sorry, I have, haven't I? Yes. So, Michael Elise, I've just got 100% confirmation that release clause has been triggered. We think it's around £35 million for the Crystal Palace forward, Michael Elise. And I'm told that there are still a few details to iron out, contractually wise, but the direction that is heading is Elise moving to Chelsea to join Moises Caicedo and potentially Romeo Lavia. And with Romeo Lavia, that one I'm told is very, very close now. Still no final agreement, but again, direction of travel, that one's going to get agreed too.
Goodness, Chelsea getting busy. Arsenal got busy. They finally brought in a second number one. Talk us through this deal.
Done deal, yeah. David Raya. It's a loan move worth £3 million. Arsenal have the option to make that permanent for £27 million next summer. Now, every time you've asked me the question about David Raya, your eyebrows have been raised because of the makeup of this deal. Now, in Brentford's press release with regard to this deal, their director of football, Phil Giles, explained to the Brentford fans why they had done a deal like this. And he said it enables the deal to be done more rapidly, with all parties wanting to make this a permanent transfer as soon as practically possible. That would imply that the loan, with the option, would probably trigger an obligation depending on a number of appearances and other conditions. Now, you remember that Raya just had 1 year left on his contract. He'd entered the final year of his contract. What Brentford had done is extend that contract by 2 years and with a further option of 12 months. So the question was, why have they done that? Well, that would explain the loan move now, because if they hadn't done that and then sent him on loan, he'd have been out of contract, out of the loan. And Phil Giles explained that. He said the extension is a fallback position in the event the transfer is not made permanent. But he seems very confident that this will become a permanent deal, because he's saying, I'm not expecting to see David Raya back at Brentford. As far as Arsenal are concerned, I know you've been asking the question throughout this window when we knew that David Raya was on his way to Arsenal. That's 2 number ones. How are they going to do that? Well, Mikel Arteta, he doesn't care. He wants competition all along the pitch, and they consider the goalkeeping department to be as important as any other area in the pitch. Aaron Ramsdale, current number 1. He was being pushed by Matt Turner. Probably Mikel Arteta thought, is he being pushed enough? I've liked David Raya for a while. I've tried to sign him before. This is a great opportunity, kind of a no-brainer kind of deal as well to get him in. So they've got David Raya in to compete with Aaron Ramsdale. It is going to be interesting to see how this one transpires. But as it stands, Aaron Ramsdale holds the shirt. David Raya comes in. There's going to be great competition in that position.
Yeah, well, here is the competition. Here is David Raya.
Over the moon to be able to take this challenge in my career, to make that step up in my career. So really excited to get going and see how the season ends up.
What was it about Arsenal that made us an attractive choice for you?
Obviously the club mainly, and obviously the boss. I spoke to the boss and he sent me the values of what Arsenal are about now and the group of lads that we have here. The way that the club is going is growing even more. So it's a beautiful challenge to take, and I couldn't say no.
We know obviously that you're a goalkeeper who enjoys having the ball at his feet. Is our style of play something as well, another reason that you wanted to join us?
Yeah, of course. That's one of the biggest part. Obviously, the way that the team plays and out from the back, being confidence, taking the possession of the other team. So that's a main thing that I think that's why I fit into the team, and I'm going to try and help as much as possible, and we will see what happens. So, but yeah, that's one of the main reasons that's why I'm attracted to Arsenal.
So Raya joins Rice, Havertz and Timber. Are Arsenal done?
You mentioned Timber there. I mean, he suffered a significant injury over the weekend in the opening game against Nottingham Forest. We're still waiting for confirmation on how long he'll be out for. If it is a long, extended period, I just wonder whether Arsenal will go back into the market to try and replace him, number one. But I think after spending, over £200 million in this transfer window, Arsenal will probably be focusing on departures. They're looking at viable exit options for the likes of Cedric Suarez, Albert Sambi-Lokonga, who was interesting Burnley at one stage. We don't know whether that one stalled or not. Nicolas Pepe, £72 million a few years ago. He's into the final year of his contract. We know that Besiktas are interested in Nicolas Pepe, but I just wonder whether there might be a situation where Arsenal and Pepe might talk first and come to some sort of mutual arrangement on the final year of his contract, and maybe he can leave as a free agent, rather like they did with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Then you've got Nuno Tavares as well. He's interesting a few clubs. Balogun is the prized asset with regard to valuation. We think that Monaco will definitely go back in with an improved offer after having a bid rejected. Arsenal's valuation is around £50 million.
Why don't Arsenal just play him? Everyone keeps saying they need a centre-forward. Why don't they play him? Because
the first choice looks like it's going to be Gabriel Jesus, and he wants first-team football. Eddie Nketiah has come in for Gabriel Jesus while he's been injured. Balogun has had the taste of first-team football with Reims last season. Fantastic season in the French league, scoring 21 league goals. He's probably thinking now's the time for me to plant my roots and just say, this is my home now. Let me see if I can make a career at another club and really, really flourish. Could that be Monaco, potentially? Inter Milan, don't rule them out yet, but we think that the price is probably prohibitive for them, and we think Simone Inzaghi isn't entirely certain whether Balogun is the right profile of player that he wants in that position, but Monaco definitely going to go back in for him.
OK, all right, let's talk Manchester United then. What's going on with Harry Maguire?
This is interesting now. Well, look, we're told that the deal to take Harry Maguire from Manchester United to West Ham United as it stands has stalled. Now, look, West Ham believe they have a total agreement with Manchester United worth £30 million. Personal terms not expected to be a problem. However, it's thought Maguire's exit from Old Trafford and the terms of his exit from Old Trafford, they haven't been resolved as yet. West Ham remain interested. Make no mistake about it. Just because it's stalled, it doesn't mean that they lose their interest in the player. But as all teams would do, with so little time left in the window, they will look at other options. They have to, because they want to fill that position. Maguire himself was an unused substitute against Wolves last night. It appears, if you just look at the first game, and it's not a great sample size, of course, but if you've got to look at last season as well, going on last night, he's fourth choice at the moment. Lisandro Martinez, Rafael Varane first choice. Lindelof came on for Martinez at half-time.
Don't forget Luke Shaw in there. He might be five.
Exactly. And that's what happened last season. So I just think that Maguire will probably have a decision to make, but Erik ten Hag is happy for him to stay because he wants players who want to fight for their place and create competition. And if Harry Maguire wants to do that, Erik ten Hag will say, no problem.
As you said, he was a substitute last night, an unused substitute last night. On the bench then, as was Dean Henderson.
Yes.
What's going on with him?
Right, so we know Manchester United and Nottingham Forest were holding talks over a loan with an obligation from United to Forest. He was on loan there last season, remember, but he had that thigh injury that required surgery. His season was cut short in January, I think. He didn't play since then. He's recovered now because, as you mentioned, he's on the bench. But the timing of his recovery probably has scuppered him a little bit with regard to getting that move to Forest, simply because he's seen David De Gea leave. He's seen Andre Onana come in as the number one. He's seen Jack Butland, who was on loan, leave the club. And today, Matej Kovar has left Manchester United on a permanent deal to buy Leverkusen. Add to that, Tom Heaton, who signed a new contract at United and was going to form part of the goalkeeping setup there, he's injured. So as it stands, he can't leave unless Manchester United have got a replacement ready to come in straight away to sit on the bench right now to cover for Andre Onana. As it stands, they haven't. So it's not a live possibility just now.
Right, OK. Nicola Zaniolo. I tried to tee him up going into the break.
Yes.
Tell us about him and where he might be heading.
Very interesting deal, this one, because Aston Villa are closing in on a loan deal. He's at Galatasaray at the moment. Unai Emery, very keen to get cover for the injured Emi Buendia. Suffered a serious knee injury, didn't he, in training last week. Likely to be out for the majority of this season. We reported yesterday that Zaniolo quickly became a target, and you can see why. The transfer guru at Aston Villa is Monchi. He was at Roma when he signed Zaniolo for Roma. Loves the player. Good relationship between the two. Zaniolo expected in Birmingham tomorrow for a medical. And I don't think it's been ruled out that the loan could come with some sort of option, depending if that's what Galatasaray are willing to do and if Villa want to pursue that area of the deal. But an exciting signing, this one, potentially for Villa.
Could be. And we mentioned Alexander Mitrovic earlier and the fact that he's probably on his way out of Fulham. Not all outgoings, though. Who are they trying to bring in?
Yeah, this is a couple of interesting names, actually, because Fulham are in the market for a right-back. Now, one of the players that they're interested in is Sevilla's Gonzalo Montiel. Now, I don't know whether you'll recognise that name, but if you go back to the World Cup final, I know we all talked about Messi, but the player who scored the decisive penalty kick in that game was Gonzalo Montiel. And he wasn't done there either, because Sevilla played Roma in the Europa League final. That went to a penalty shootout. Guess who scored the decisive penalty then? Gonzalo Montiel as well. So, a bit of a specialist there. He's still got 3 years left on his contract at Sevilla, but maybe significantly, he was on the bench for Sevilla's opening game in La Liga, the 2-1 defeat to Valencia on Friday, unused substitute. The other player that Fulham are looking at is the Leicester City right back, Timothy Castagna. He was an unused substitute in Leicester's opening game of the season and then in the EFL Cup tie as well. He wasn't part of the squad at all against Huddersfield. He's into the final 2 years of his contract, and as we always say on the transfer show, once you get to that part of your contract, it's probably the optimum time to get the maximum transfer fee for a player. So maybe one of those two could be heading to Fulham.
Now, we've been speaking about Chuba Akpom a lot in this window. A move to Ajax, is that still a possibility?
It's almost as good as done, this one. Look, we know that Lens went in with an offer. We know that Sheffield United were interested as well. And then Ajax emerged in the past couple of days as the front runners. And they agreed a deal with Middlesbrough worth £12.7 million, including add-ons. He's entered the final year of his contract. There was no indication he was going to sign a new contract. So Middlesbrough thought this is a deal that would probably going to have to accept. He's in Amsterdam right now. He's been having a medical. We are expecting now some sort of formal announcement to be very, very soon now, because he should have completed his medical by now, should be finalising that contract, and he should be an Ajax player very, very soon.
Now, we've spoken about Chelsea an awful lot.
Yeah.
2 words for you. Romelu Lukaku.
How long have you got? This one has been rumbling on and on and on throughout the whole of this transfer window. We know that Inter Milan wanted him. Lukaku wanted Inter Milan, and then he started talking to Juventus, and Inter Milan went, "You don't do that. We're out. we don't want anything to do with it. The only problem is Juventus remain interested, but they can't do a deal unless they sell players. They need to raise funds to be able to buy Romelu Lukaku. And the Max Allegri, the Juventus manager, he's the guy who is really pushing for this particular deal. Now, people would say it's quite an easy deal to do if Dusan Vlahovic goes one way, Romelu Lukaku and money goes the other. But they couldn't agree on the amount of money that would go to Juventus to be able to bring Dusan Vlahovic. So I don't think they're entertaining that part of the deal anymore. Juve still want him, we know. As far as Chelsea are concerned, they're working very closely with Lukaku to explore all exit options to European clubs until September the 1st at 11 o'clock. And then Saudi Arabia for the week after. Now, we do recall that there has been a lot of interest from Saudi in Romelu Lukaku. Up until now, he doesn't want to entertain Saudi Arabia. He feels he's got something to do still in European
football. That might have changed, given all the players going.
If come 11 o'clock on September the 1st, he hasn't got any kind of move, he may have to do that because he doesn't look like he's in Chelsea's plans at all just now.
Right, we are really running out of time, but just before we go, just recap for us, Lavia and Elise, where those moves are.
Right, so Chelsea just don't stop. They've triggered the release clause in Michael Elise's contract from Crystal Palace. We think that release clause is £35 million. Few details to sort out before they can formally finalise that deal. It gives them permission to talk to Elise. They don't really have to go through the club because they're not negotiating a fee. He can have a medical, but it's up to Elise now. But the early indications we're getting is that Elise would be open to talking to Chelsea and to moving to Chelsea. Lavia, another one, very, very close indeed. That agreement between Chelsea and Southampton. Liverpool have an agreement on the table, but Romeo Lavia says, thanks, but I want to go to Chelsea.
Dharmesh Sheth keeping us right across all of today's transfer news. So much going on. Dharmesh, thank you very much. That is the transfer show for today. Back tomorrow, normal times, 5 and at 7. I'm back after the break with all the rest of the sports news. See you then.